All right, everyone, welcome to Understanding the Physical World. So, this is our Unit Zero, just kind of an introduction to what this course is going to be all about so that you know what you're in for this semester. So, our lesson goals here are to meet your professor, me, then to understand the structure of the course and to understand the coursework expectations that you'll have through this semester. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Stentor Danielson, and so Stentor is my first name, Danielson is my last name. So if you're going to, refer to me formally, it'd be Dr. Danielson, Professor Danielson. So I actually grew up not too far from Slippery Rock. I went to elementary school in Tynesta, Pennsylvania. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's about an hour or so north of SRU, and then went to high school in Palmerton, Pennsylvania, which is on the other side of the state, kind of near Allentown. I got my bachelor's in geography at Colgate University, which is a little liberal arts college in upstate New York. And yes, it is named after the family that founded the toothpaste company. And then I got my PhD in geography at Clark University in Worcester, Massachusetts. I've been at Slippery Rock for 16 years. This is the start of my 17th year right now. And my main area of research that I work on is wildfire preparedness. So we're going to have a whole unit about wildfire later in this course where I get to, bring in my personal area of expertise there. And some of my hobbies that may come up or get referenced are geocaching, which is kind of a scavenger hunt game where you go and find things that people have hidden. We're actually going to do just a little bit of geocaching as part of this course to help us learn about how we navigate the world. I'm also a big fan of science fiction, novels, TV, etc. You may notice I'm wearing a Doctor Who t-shirt right now, one of my favorite shows. And then I also foster kittens, and two of them have come to live with us permanently. And so you can see there, Monks and Rodrigo, the two cats that share my house permanently, plus the sort of rotating cast of little kittens as well. Okay, so for this course, there are 4 learning outcomes established by the university for what we want students to get out of Science 102, regardless of which professor they're taking it with. And so hopefully this is what you will get out of this course. So outcome number 1, understand the scientific process. So we want you to understand science as a process, a way of learning things about the world. How do scientists learn about the world? Second, we want you to become scientifically literate. So we want you to be able to examine scientific research and understand it, see if it's valid or not. Then outcome 3, we want you to learn some basic physical science concepts. So not just about sort of what science is in general, but we want you to learn some of the content that scientists have learned about our world. And the outcome says related to contemporary issues. So we want to show you why this is relevant. Right? You're not just learning science because science is cool to know about, although I think science is cool to know about. You're also learning it because it's relevant to your life. Even if you are not going to be a practicing scientist in your life, in your career, whatever, there's lots of scientific information that is important for you to be able to live a happy and successful life. And then outcome 4, we want you to be able to collect, analyze, and interpret data. So I'm not just going to be telling you the conclusions that scientists have come to about various things. We're also going to look at how did we get there? How can we take some raw data that you may collect for yourself in some cases and turn that into scientifically valid conclusions? So those are all very sort of high level abstract outcomes because each professor that runs this class is going to pick a different area of focus through which to achieve those learning outcomes. So for this section of the course, we're going to be doing this through the medium of earth science, since that's my area of expertise, and we're in particular going to be focusing on natural hazards. So things like earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires. These are all things that are going to be relevant to your life. These are events that continue to happen all the time as I'm recording this. We've got a hurricane threatening the east coast of the United States. We've got several major wildfires burning out west. So these are things that you should know something about, and hopefully that will be something that you get out of this class. So the structure of the course is we're going to have 14 units of content. So each one of those is, you can think of it essentially as a week. So each week we'll have a new topic area that we're going to work our way through, and there will be 14 of those. And the work that we're going to do in each of those units is going to be a combination of lecture. So I'll record some PowerPoint lectures like you see right now, some readings that I'll give you to do, some other videos that you may be asked to watch, and some hands-on lab work where you're going to actually be collecting data, processing data, drawing your own conclusions, not just learning what I tell you about what other people have done. And because this is an earth science-based course, we want to get out and see the Earth. So there are going to be field trips as part of this course. So some of those field trips, since this is an online course, will be virtual field trips, where you'll see a video of me or somebody else going out to a place and showing you around, showing you what's going on there. And a number of those will take place at the McCoskey Center. So if you're not familiar with the McCoskey Center, it's located on Harmony Road, just adjacent to the main SRU campus. It's actually part of Slippery Rock University. It's run by the university, and they own a big chunk of land there where they do research and conservation work related to the environment. It's a really cool thing to check out. They have programs all the time on various environment and sustainability related issues. So if you're on campus, if you're in the Slippery Rock area, I strongly encourage you to go visit it yourself. But if you're not on campus, I know some of you are taking this course online because you're, for example, doing student teaching, and so you're off at wherever your field site is for most of the semester and can't attend a face-to-face version of this class. You don't need to worry. You're not required to visit any of these places yourself. That's why we have the virtual field trips. There will also be times when I do ask you to go outside and look for things in the landscape around you, but those won't require you to go to any particular place. So if you are on campus, you can do those exercises right on campus in town here in Slippery Rock. If you are somewhere else this semester, you'll be able to do those things wherever it is that you are. So you will have to go outside a bit. I encourage you to dress appropriately for whatever outdoor activity you do, but you don't have to go to any particular place for it, since we're an online class and you may be all over the place as you're doing this class. So our assignments are, there are three main assignments, three things that you're going to get graded on. So first, you're going to have quizzes. So for each of those 14 units, there is a quiz, and you'll submit that through D2L, the Desire to Learn platform. And the quiz will be 10 questions. It's meant to check your comprehension of the class material. So it's going to ask you questions about the lecture videos, about any other videos I give you to watch, about any readings that I give you, all the materials for that unit. There will be questions about it, but the quiz, it has no time limit. So you can open it up, look at the questions, save it, shut it down, come back later, open it again, work on it some more, save, go away, come back as much as you want until you have to turn it in. So once you start the quiz, you don't have to worry about, oh, now I have to finish it before I can shut it off. And so you have plenty of time to double check your answers, right? Because this is meant to ensure that you are doing all of this work and that you are getting the main points of it. So if you see a question in the quiz and you're like, oh, I know they talked about that in the lecture, but I don't remember the exact answer, you can just go back to the lecture video, right? Scroll through and find the appropriate spot, double check your answer, and then go put the correct answer in the quiz. So you have all the time that you need to complete the quiz in terms of time limit to once you've started it, but you do need to get it finished and submitted by midnight on Friday. So all of your stuff is always going to be due midnight on Friday of the week for that unit. So your first quiz will be due midnight this coming Friday, the Friday at the end of this first week of the semester. So you can take all the time you want to work on it, but you got to get it finished and submitted by Friday. Second kind of assignment you're going to have are activities, or I'll sometimes call them labs. These also, there's one for each unit, and it's also something you're going to submit through D2L. It's actually created using the quizzes function on D2L, so you can find them under the quizzes tab in addition to being linked under the main content section on D2L. So it's set up using the quizzes function, but I'm calling these activities because they're going to involve doing different kinds of things. In this case, rather than just answering multiple choice questions, these are going to be things where you have to access additional materials, you have to think through scientific problems, you have to apply what you've learned in the lectures and other materials to new problems, new data, in order to draw conclusions about it. And these are going to be where we're really going to emphasize how could you apply this to your actual life. So you're going to have these activities or labs, one per unit, due by midnight on Friday, just like the quizzes. And just like the quizzes, no time limit in terms of how long you can take to work on it, as long as you get finished by the due date. And I really encourage you, for both quizzes and especially for the activities, beginning of the week, open it up, take a look at it, see what you're going to have to do. So that way, as you're listening to the lecture, you have in mind, oh, I know that I need to really pay attention to this aspect of it because I'm going to use that in the activities, so I need to make sure I know what I'm doing. Or some of the activities may require you to do things that might take a little more time, or that you might only be able to do during certain hours. So for example, the ones that might require you to go outside, you're probably going to want to do that when it's light out. So you don't want to be waiting until 10 o'clock on Friday to try to finish this activity, and then, oh, I have to go outside and take a picture of something and it's dark. So I strongly encourage you, open up the activity at the beginning of the week, just see what it's going to ask you to do, even if you don't have time then to work on it and do any of that, any of the material, just so that you know what you're in for and you can kind of plan out your week, how you're going to complete that work. So you're going to have a quiz for each unit, you're going to have an activity for each unit, so 14 of each of those. And then you're going to have one single final project. So this will be something that will be turned in during final exam week. So we are not going to have a traditional final exam, right? You're not going to have a test that you have to do where you have to have memorized all these facts from the course. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to do some sort of a creative project where you're going to apply things that you've learned throughout the semester to doing something that is going to be useful for your own life. So you're going to come up with a project, you're going to carry out that project, and then you're going to present to me what you did and talk about, what it was, how it relates to the class, how it expanded your learning. And there are some examples in the syllabus of the kind of things that might make good final projects. I'll say more about this as we get closer to the end of the semester. And you maybe have a better idea of what you might want to do, or what topic areas that we've gone over interest you that you might want to connect to your final project. But just keep in mind, you will have this project to work on, but there won't be a traditional test exam kind of thing at the end of our semester. So just to note some student support type resources. So first, disability accommodations. So I've already gotten some of the messages from the disabilities office about some folks that are already signed up with them, already have accommodations approved. I encourage anyone who thinks they might have a disability of some sort, even if you think you probably aren't going to need accommodations, go talk to the disabilities office anyway. Because if you are in their system, have gone through all the paperwork already, it'll be much easier if halfway through the semester, in whether it's this class or another class, you suddenly realize that you might want to make use of those accommodations. And for those of you that have the accommodations, if you want to talk to me about using them, just send me an email and I'm happy to talk about that and get that sorted out for you. Remember that you do have to talk to the professor and say what accommodations you plan to use, even if we've gotten the letter of what you're approved for by the disabilities office. Then there's also the full text is in your syllabus, excuse me, is the Title IX notice. So basically, if you talk to me about anything about your personal life, during office hours or, in an email or whatever, you tell me about things, I'm going to keep that in total confidence. I'm not going to share that with anybody else. I respect your privacy. However, legally speaking, I am a mandated reporter. All of your professors are mandated reporters if we come across information about child abuse. So regardless of who the perpetrator or victim is, we'd be required to report that to a particular person with the university that would then get in contact with law enforcement and so forth. So just keep that in mind. There's one thing that I'm not allowed to keep in confidence, legally speaking, if you share things about your personal life with me. Then again, full text is in the syllabus, which I should mention, syllabus is posted on D2L if you haven't seen it there already. Chosen name and pronouns. I want to call you what you want to be called. So if you want to go by a name that's different than what shows up on your email when you message me, or on your Zoom if you log in to talk to me on Zoom, just let me know. I'm happy to do that. And I would expect all of your classmates, to the extent that you're interacting with your classmates in an asynchronous online course, I would expect your classmates to also respect the name and pronouns that you would want to be called by. Then I have office hours. So my official office hours are Monday noon to 2, Tuesday 11 to noon, Wednesday noon to 2. If those times don't work for you, happy to talk about meeting at a different time if we find something that works for both of us. If you are on campus and you want to come by and talk to me face-to-face in person, my office is ATS 327. So that's on the 3rd floor, of course, of the Advanced Technology and Science Hall. And if you go in through the main environmental geoscience door, all of the professor's offices are in the kind of back hallway there, and mine will be the first one on your right. Since this is an online class, I imagine most of you would want to talk to me on Zoom, so I've got my Zoom link for you there. It's also going to be in the syllabus so that you can log on and talk to me virtually via Zoom. And I'm happy to talk about anything you want to talk about related to the class. And if you are having any sort of problems in the class, if there are things you're not understanding, if there are things you're struggling with, if there's something that's making it hard for you to get all of your work done in a timely manner, please come talk to me. My goal is for you to succeed in the class, and I can accomplish that goal much better if you talk to me early on, right when you first notice that there's a problem. If you wait till the end of the semester and you've already missed, 50% of your assignments, and then you come talk to me about something, it's going to be a lot harder to help you, a lot harder to get you back on track. So please come talk to me if there's anything that is a concern for you with this class, because I want you to succeed. I don't want anyone to get a bad grade in this class. I want everybody to learn all of this material that I find fascinating and interesting. So please come talk to me if there's anything I can do that will help you succeed. Now, I will do everything I can to help you succeed, but this is also a two-way street, right? You can't succeed in this class without taking some agency, without taking ownership of how you're going to do in this class, and putting in the effort and work that you need to do on your end. Because as an adult, as a college student, you choose what to make of this class. If you want to have this class be something that you put minimum effort into to get a barely passing grade, to check a box on your degree audit, I can't stop you from doing that, right? That's a choice that you can make. And certainly I remember classes that I felt that way about when I was in college. But at the same time, since you have to be here, since you have to do this class anyway, why not make something of it? Why not say, since I have to be here, let's get something out of it. Let's get something more for my money and time than just a check mark on my degree audit. So you should be thinking about, what can I get out of this class? What am I learning here that's going to be useful, important, and that I can put my effort into? Because good learning is effortful. Good learning takes work. We all like to have this fantasy that we could just get knowledge beamed into our brain and not have to do anything, and suddenly we know stuff. But that's not how the human brain works. That's not how learning works. You learn when you put effort into it. You learn when you are working at it. It's the same with physical exercise, right? You're not going to build muscles, build stamina by sitting around. You have to work at it, and you have to push yourself to that point where it's difficult, where you are lifting more weights than is comfortable for you. Obviously, if you go too far, then you're not going to get anything out of it. You're going to hurt yourself or just fail. You can't lift the thing up. But if you're going to actually build your physical fitness, you need to be doing stuff that takes work, that makes you sweat, that leaves you tired afterwards. And the same thing is true for intellectual work. You have to be putting in some effort. It needs to be a challenge that you're overcoming in order to really learn stuff. And I hope that you're willing to put in that effort, because that's what makes this rewarding for me. So one of my kind of mottos that I like to turn to is this quote that is still as relevant today as it was almost 2,000 years ago, when Rabbi Hanina said, "I've learned much from my teachers, more from my colleagues, and most from my students." So I learn things from having you in this class. Your questions, your creative ideas that come up in the work that you do are things that I learn from. And so if you're here to learn, then I'm here to learn from you. And I'm excited about doing that. So one thing that won't contribute to your learning would be cheating or plagiarism. So cheating we can think of as getting the right answers to an assignment without knowing the material. Right? Any way that you might get the right answers other than actually knowing the material, you're probably cheating. Plagiarism is representing other people's work as your own. So if you submit something and are telling me, this is my work, I wrote this, I came up with these ideas, but you didn't actually write that, you didn't come up with that ideas, it came from someone else, that's plagiarism. You're representing someone else's work as your own. And when you do either of those things, you're harming your own learning. Right? You're not learning anything if you cheat. You're not learning anything if you plagiarize. And so I take these things seriously, because it's kind of my reputation online. If I give you a grade and say, yeah, you learned, an A's worth of material in this class, but you actually cheated or plagiarized, then I've just given false information about you. So if I do discover that you have cheated or plagiarized on an assignment, first incident that comes up, you'll get a 0 for that assignment. Second incident, you get a 0 for the class. Fail the class entirely. I strongly recommend, if you're unsure if something counts as cheating or plagiarism, you're not sure if it's legit to approach an assignment in a certain way, talk to me. I will not hold it against you if you say, can I do this? And I have to tell you, no, that would be considered cheating. That's not like, I won't think bad of you. I'll think well of you that you asked and you checked before you did it, and made sure that we were going to be all good before you approached your assignment in a particular way. So that then leads to the question, well, what about generative AI or large language models? So these are things like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok. I think there's a bunch of other ones out there now. Right? Do they constitute cheating or plagiarism? So that's a more complicated question, because these are a very new technology. Remember that ChatGPT first was released to the public less than 3 years ago. So this is a sort of a brand new thing. And so what you're going to find is that your professors in different classes are going to have very different attitudes towards generative AI. They're going to have very different policies on how and whether you can use it in their class. There is no consistent standard across all the professors at Slippery Rock. So it's very important for you to understand where each individual professor sits and to meet the expectations they have for their class, even if it's different than what you're doing or what you're being told in another class. And I think this diagram here is a good way to kind of help you think about where each of your classes sit in terms of whether and how you can or should be using generative AI in that class. And I know it might be a little hard to read some of the small text on here. If you go to the URL there, leonfurs.com, you can see the full thing if you want to read those descriptions. And so what Dr. Furs has done here is basically create kind of a scale of what attitudes towards AI might be present in a given class. So you may have some professors that run their class at a 1 here. No AI, completely banned, will fail you for the class if they find that you've been using ChatGPT to help you with your assignments. You may have other professors that are, maybe a 4. Maybe they're encouraging you to incorporate AI into your workflow as you do the assignments for the class. And so it's important for you to understand that those are different professors, they're doing different things. And just because, one professor is encouraging you to use AI in your course doesn't mean that you can necessarily do it in another professor's course if they don't want you doing it, and vice versa. So using this scale, I can place myself at a 1. So I do not think that generative AI is an appropriate tool to be using for this class. And so I do not want you using it. If I find incontrovertible evidence that you've been using AI to create your assignments, that for me, again, different professors may have different views, may treat things differently, but for me, I would consider it to be a form of plagiarism to use generative AI to create your assignment in this class, because I'm expecting you to do the work for yourself, and you're submitting it saying, I wrote this, I came up with these ideas, not Grok or Claude or whatever other AI system. Now, I recognize that it can be hard to tell when somebody has used AI, especially if they've been using it, if you're using it like the level 2 there for planning or something, I'm probably not going to know, right? And I'm also aware that attempts to detect whether text has been AI generated, for example, are kind of unreliable. They often are falsely accusing people who are neurodivergent or the English isn't their first language, get falsely accused of AI. So I'm going to try to give you the benefit of the doubt, but if there's clear evidence, right? If you give me like a made up citation to a source that doesn't exist, then I could probably tell like that came from AI, because that's a thing that AI often does. So if there's clear evidence that you've used AI for your assignments in this course, then I would consider that to be cheating or plagiarism. Now, since it's hard for me to police that, right? I'm not watching your computer to see if you are like getting ideas from ChatGPT before you write up your assignment. Rather than approaching this in a punitive, like, I'm policing you, what I'd rather do is explain to you why I'm placing our course at the level 1 on the AI scale. Why do I not want you to use AI in this course? And hopefully, if you understand my reasoning and you are here because you want to learn something about the material we're going to cover in this class, then you'll appreciate for its own sake why using AI would be inappropriate. And there's 3 families of issues that I have with AI that I think make it inappropriate for this class. So the first family is factual issues. So generative AI doesn't know anything. And it doesn't have information about the world. It doesn't understand how the world works. Instead, what it does is it produces outputs that look like what an answer to your question would look like, right? You ask it a question, it knows what an answer to that question would look like, and it gives you that. And so you can see that in this example that I've put up here. You may have seen this going around social media last year that somebody discovered if you asked the Google AI, how many rocks should I eat? It will give you this result that says you should eat at least 1 small rock a day. And in this case, right, I don't think anybody was fooled into eating rocks by this particular result, because we know things about the world. We know that rocks are not actually edible and you shouldn't be eating them. So we can look at this and laugh that the AI got it wrong, but it's useful to think about why the AI got it wrong. Because the AI is used to seeing what answers to how many of this thing should I eat look like. Right? It's seen lots of examples of people asking, how many vegetables should I eat in a day? How many candy bars should I eat in a day? And it knows kind of what an answer to that would look like. So it produced an answer that looked like that, in this case about rocks, because it hasn't seen people ask this, honestly really stupid question about how many rocks you should eat. And so that sort of tricked the AI into giving this incorrect answer. And again, in this case, anybody reading this, knows enough about rocks to know not to eat them, even if AI says to. But in other cases, it's not as obvious how the AI is getting it wrong. So there are a lot of concerns about, for example, mushroom foraging. So people use AI to generate answers about which mushrooms are safe to eat. And that can be incredibly dangerous, because there are a lot of very poisonous mushrooms out there, and some of them look very, very similar to edible mushrooms. And so if the AI doesn't actually know anything about mushrooms, it just knows what answers to questions about mushrooms kind of look like, it could give you some very wrong information. So that means that if you generate information out of AI, you need to fact check it. You need to check that everything it says is actually correct. You can't trust what it's telling you. And by the time you fact checked what AI is giving you, you might as well have just figured it out yourself. And I think a good summary of some of these issues with AI comes from the sociologist Tressie McMillan Cottom. She said, AI is mid. Okay? AI gives you a sort of lowest common denominator, averaged out answer to things. And we want to be better than mid in this class, right? We want to get real, genuine knowledge about the world, not just a plausible looking answer to something. Now, second, this is a class where we're going to be dealing with earth science. And so we're thinking about how do we use the physical world around us? How do we interact with it? How do we steward our resources and so forth? So we want to think about the environmental impacts of generative AI. And so these are very complex computer programs. They require a lot of computing power. And it's easy to imagine that this has sort of nothing to do with the physical world because it's happening out in the cloud. You know, you just type things in on your browser or on your smartphone and get answers. But what's happening there is your prompt is being sent to a data center somewhere. So somebody had to build a building and fill it with computers, and your request goes there, and then those computers have to do a whole bunch of calculations. So they require the material world, you know, these physical computer servers to do all these calculations. And in the process of doing that, that takes a lot of energy. Right? You need electricity to run these computers. And as they do their calculations, they're generating a lot of heat, right? When computers are working hard, they heat up. And so in these giant data centers, they use water to cool things down so the computers don't melt down from calculating the answers to your AI prompt. And all of those are things that require the physical world. The physical world is implicated in everything that we do with generative AI and any other computer applications that are, you know, sending data back and forth with these data centers. But AI is particularly computationally intensive. To come up with the kind of answers that AIs are giving us requires a lot of work by those computers. So a lot of energy, a lot of heat that needs to be dissipated. And so what we're seeing today is we're seeing fossil fuel plants that were going to be retired, right? Taken out of the game, no longer producing CO2 emissions that contribute to climate change. They're being kept online because these AI data centers need all of this electricity. And so we're keeping these old polluting plants running to supply the electricity that they need. And we're consuming huge amounts of water, sometimes in areas that are experiencing water shortages already. But then the AI data center comes along and they need a whole bunch of extra water to cool their computers. And so there are various estimates out there of just how much water that this takes. And it's a little tricky to estimate because the companies that run these are very secretive about exactly how much energy and water consumption their data center is doing. And there's, of course, a whole lot of factors that may make the amount of water and energy consumption vary greatly from case to case. Things about, you know, what brand of computers they're running on and what the outside weather is like at the time you make your request and how complicated your query is, and, you know, all kinds of other things. But there was a study done by Dr. Xiaolei Ren at UC Riverside recently that estimated that generating 5 responses to AI, so, you know, 5 different prompts that you ask it, could consume as much as 16 ounces of water. So that's, you know, as much as a standard bottle of water. So just imagine every 5 things you ask an AI for, you might be pouring out essentially a whole bottle of water onto the ground. That's the amount of water that's being consumed there. So we need to remember that everything that we do, even things that seem as ethereal as getting answers from ChatGPT, it's based on the material world. It's based on the physical world that we live in. And then finally, in what I think is really the most important reason that I don't think generative AI is appropriate for this course is the intellectual issues that it raises. Because getting an answer from AI shortcuts the learning process. And so to go back to that comparison between physical exercise and learning, you wouldn't train for a marathon by driving your car 26 miles. Right? If you drive your car 26 miles, you can arrive at the finish line of the marathon, but you haven't gotten any better at running. Right? Your legs haven't gotten any stronger if you drove your car those 26 miles. Your, you know, cardiovascular health hasn't been improved by going those 26 miles if you went in your car instead of running it. And, you know, as much as it may be difficult, it takes more time, it takes more energy, you're really tired at the end if you run 26 miles. That's the only thing that's going to train you to be able to run marathons in the future, is if you actually run it yourself when you're practicing. If you take a shortcut by driving your car, you're not gaining anything from it. You're arriving at the finish line without having gotten the exercise that you're supposed to get along the way. And ultimately, if you're not learning, if you're not putting in the effort to learn things through working through the assignments yourself, you're spending a lot of time and money for not very much output. You have the opportunity to learn a lot of what I think are really cool and interesting things in this class. And so I think you're essentially cheating yourself if you take shortcuts to that learning. So in conclusion, I want to end this on a positive and a inspiring note, because I'm excited about teaching this class. I'm excited about having you here because we live in an awesome world, and let's go learn about it. I'm leaving you with an image from the TV show Doctor Who, which is all about exploring the wonders of the universe. That's the attitude that I want to bring into our class. So I will see you in our first lesson.